Hi gang, this is Catherine Welford from BMC, and I'd like to talk to you today about how to go about reading and interpreting our EUEM reports. If you've worked with EUM before, you may have looked at these, but I want to really try and help you get a story from even just looking at one report. So today we're going to focus on two of my favorites, our favorites, and the reason for that is that really in a nutshell they tell you as much as you could possibly get about the performance and availability of your application. So we're going to start off with the latency all sources report. This is a great one because it really shows you in one screen all the elements of latency that make up the end-to-end, as well as the amount of requests that have come in. So you can see how your application behaves over time and under different loads. Okay, so what I've done here is I've selected last 7 days. In this case, I've just focused on all pages because, well, the nature of the traffic doesn't really matter so much as the picture in this case. Alright, so let's get cracking. So you notice at the top of this particular graph, we've got the average and percentile values as radio buttons. So we could, if we wanted to, we could look at, say, the 99th percentile or the 90th, what have you. The idea here, of course, is rather than just the average, which can be skewed either way by outliers, the percentile values show us basically, if I say the 85th percentile, I'm saying that 85% of my traffic saw these numbers or lower, or conversely, my worst 15% saw these values or higher. So depending on how much your traffic, because you can't make everyone happy all the time, right? You're going to pick percentile values that are meaningful to you. But let's just focus on the average for now, okay? So what we can see here, and the reason I choose the last 7 days is because I want to see what that traffic looks like over the week. Obviously, our Saturday and our Sunday are pretty quiet, and the weekdays have more traffic. So there's two things you might see here. You might see that as traffic increases, so does our latency. Now, what does this mean? Well, it could mean that, your application simply struggles the more traffic there is. Right? The more people show up at the door, the longer it takes for everything to happen. And this is especially true in this case because we can see that we have an increase in host time. So obviously the servers are under more load. Now we might see a different situation than this for other traffic. Let's say you have super beefy servers, excellent pipes, so on and so forth, such that during the day, when all the people are screaming in on their T1s and whatnot, you might find that the latencies don't really budge at all. You might find they only change at night when, say, the number of requests drops down. Now, why is this? Well, remember, we're looking at the average. So if we see spikes at night when there are less users, all this means is that there are less good points of data to bring those outliers down, right? This could be people at home on their analog modems or even on their phones or what have you. And they might just have poor performance than the people in the office with their good connections. Okay, so we've already now figured out a lot about our traffic just by looking at this picture, right? So we can see obviously that we break down the latency into the various elements of latency, right? So light blue, of course, will be our host time. So this is how long it takes for your application to produce what was asked for, right? Never mind how long it took to get there. As soon as the request stops, the stopwatch starts, and as soon as the response starts coming back, we stop it, and that's our host time. The network time, of course, is really just all the intervening time, like how long it took for the packets to get there and how long it took for them to get back and acknowledge and so on and so forth, right? So if we see a lot of network time, this could be an indication that there is either great distance between the users in question in the application or maybe even a problem, okay? You'll notice that we also have a small band of SSL, of course, so if on these requests we happen to have an SSL handshake, that will be represented here, primarily so you can notice if ever there's a problem with the SSL latencies, right? Last but not least, we also have, say, the idle time, and we know for pages that idle time is the space between objects. Now, if you have a lot of content that's served elsewhere other than your origin, that could be a reason for these gaps between objects, but we might also have a lot of idle time, say if you have large JavaScripts that could do with some streamlining or just making more efficient, okay? So you'll notice with our graphs that the axes, in fact, are all squishable, right? And we can also, once we've squished them, we can also, sort of move around. So this allows us to really focus in on things, especially if they're really scrunched up and you can't see them well. Okay? Now, you'll notice for 7 days, the smallest granularity we can get to is 1 hour, because obviously, if we were to try and display 5-minute buckets over 7 days, it would be almost meaningless, right? So we pick a granularity that will make things more visible. If you pick less than 24 hours for your time range, you can actually see by 5-minute buckets. Okay? In addition, at the bottom of the report, we can also see the numbers for the whole time period in question. So for the last 7 days, we've seen this many requests, right? And we can also see, because we have chosen average, the various latency figures, the averages for that traffic, right? So on average, we had about 417 milliseconds of host latency. Okay. Now the other latency reports will look different, right? Because if we're just focusing on one element of latency, such as host latency, then what will happen, instead of having these radio buttons here, you will see the lines of that traffic, all of them, and then you can turn them on or off to really get the best view. Okay. So this is the latency all sources. As you can see, a very good way of seeing the performance of your application over time. Okay.